Before we start this video, I wanted to make sure you understand that you can really mess your car up if you don't know what you're doing with this stuff. I have a background in electronics and computing, and I did quite a lot of research before I attempted this. So please, if you don't have a good understanding of this, don't attempt it. Get someone to help you, someone to do it for you, someone who knows what they're doing. Before we start to look at the some video and pictures of the final wiring, I wanted to cover the theory behind thinning the loom. So this is a bit of a prequel, I suppose, in some ways. The first thing I wanted to cover was the rationale behind deciding what wiring you can remove. So if we take the airbag control unit, or it's referred to as SRS or MRS in different software types, but anyway, the one that controls all the airbags and also actually the seat sensors, and like the occupancy sensor and the seat belt buckle sensor, all of those things are controlled by this unit. Now, if you unplug all the plugs out of this control unit, and the car will still start and run, and everything else works okay, albeit you will get a warning on the dash that your airbags, there's an airbag fault, and you'll also get a warning that the seats are not, the buckles aren't put into each seat. You'll get those two warnings, but everything else should work okay. Now, when you think about it, you've got all the sensors on one side of this unit, and it's all communicating with the other modules, like actually the Kombi, the instrument panel, is one of the things that communicates with the airbag unit to check things like the seat sensors and the buckle sensor. So that's all done over the K can, the low speed can in the car. So if you disconnect all of this, if you just pull the plugs and everything works okay, then there's a pretty good chance that you can remove this unit completely, and you can remove all the wiring associated with the airbags, the seat sensors, and the occupancy sensor. So you can take that all away. Similarly, with the parking distance control, the PDC unit that's in the boot of the car, it's the same sort of setup. So if you pull the plugs on that and it continues to work, then you can strip out all of the ultrasonic sensors, sounders and everything else on this side, because obviously they are not stopping the car from working. And in fact, what I discovered with my car is that the PDC unit had failed anyway, so none of this was working even when I bought the car. So I was quite safe to remove this and all the associated wiring. The other wiring that I removed was all of the wiring associated with the rear doors. So in my case, that's centralized locking, and also on my car it's got these little LED downlights on the handles, on the door handles, which light up with the car lights, so you can see the door handles at night. All of that I've removed. All of the wiring associated with the radio speakers and the aerial. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of radio speaker wiring, because you've got the base units under the seats, you've got the units in the doors, you've got the units on the rear parcel shelf or right at the very back. All of that wiring can be removed. There's also a piece of rubber tubing that runs right down the length of the car from the rear tailgate through the a sort of conduit thing by the hinge, all the way inside the car along the right hand side of the passenger compartment, following the battery cable actually. You can remove all of that. And then there are the battery cables, because we're relocating the battery. We can remove the battery cables that pass through the passenger compartment and the ones that pass under the floor. Interestingly, I thought that when I removed the one under the floor, because it's much thicker and it's longer, I thought I was going to make a heck of a weight saving. It turns out that that cable is aluminium cord, whereas the one that goes through the passenger compartment is copper cord. So the passenger compartment one weighs more than the one that goes under the floor, which was something unexpected. That's the theory behind thinning, you know, the decisions that you make about thinning the wiring. Here are the resulting warnings from the removal of the airbag unit. If I can just get it to stay in focus. So you can see that we have the airbag warning light and the seatbelt warning light. I'll also show you what you get if you scan the codes on the car. So as you can see, we've got this error A3B3 from the instrument cluster, saying that there are no messages coming from the multiple restraint system. So that you'll have to live with. That will be a permanent thing, obviously, without the airbag module installed. To strip the wiring out, you'll need to unwrap the material tape that's all around the loom. And you'll find that the loom is held against the body with one of these types of clips, either this sort, which goes onto a threaded piece that comes out of the car, or this is pushed into a hole. They're really easy to fit. When you come to wrap the loom back up, you simply wrap some tape around this, and I wrapped it once around this side, crossed it over at the back, and then wrapped it the other side. So the main point here is don't throw these away, okay, because you'll need them, because that's the way you'll be able to hold the loom back in the car. The tape I used was this stuff. I don't know what I've done with the open roll of it, but it's basically a material tape like the original BMW one. This one is called TESA, T-E-S-A, 15mm by 25mm. 25 meters. Really cheap, really good to use actually. I have to say, much better than the plastic type of insulation tape. It's so much easier to handle and it holds really well. I'm very impressed. I'm not surprised it's used for wiring looms. It's very good. So I was concerned about this cable bundle chafing against the bolt of the roll cage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of plastic, which is an old bit of yogurt pot. I'm going to wrap it around here like this, and then put some of this black material tape around it to hold it in place. Okay, there you go. So there's no chance of that chafing against the cables now, so that should be good. I just got to put some more clips as this run goes back. I've run the, I've sort of clipped the SmartyCam cable and the aerial for the radio. No, it's control for the radio actually, the push button control for the radio. I've run those alongside the main bundle and just attached them in place so that if I want to just remove those two, I can just cut through that tape there and clip and cut this tie wrap here and all the way through, so that I can just remove them quite easily. That's what I'm trying to get at. We're removing the big battery cable, this one here that comes up here, from under the car. So let's go down and have a look under the car. So you can see it runs all the way along the length of the car. I've cut it here, as you can see, with my trusty Dremel, and then it goes through the wheel arch. So I've still got my liners installed, and if I just pull back this liner, hang on a minute, let me grab the... Okay, so you can see it in there, so I'm going to have to cut where that tape is, because I think that's holding it in place. So I'll cut the tape and I should be able to pull this section up through from under the bonnet. Right, let's see if that'll come now. Oh yeah, that's pretty easy. There you go. So let's remove that out of there. So all I've got to do now is remove it from along the length of the car underneath. You know, I'd forgotten that this battery cable runs in that plastic tray you see above. If we can just get the camera to focus a bit. So I'm going to cut all the cable ties. There's one, and it comes, unfortunately it goes round underneath the fuel tank, and I'm going to try and get away without taking the fuel tank out again, because I really don't want to do that. So you can see there's a number of cable ties as you go along. I'm going to try and cut the cable ties. I'll also cut the cable just where it enters the end of the trunk in, and I'll see if I can pull it through without having to take the fuel tank out. So I've been rather unsuccessful here. I can't pull the cable through the trunking. The cable's too thick, the trunking's too convoluted, and so all I've done is cut it at this end. One thing you should be aware of is a number of the clips that are used to hold the battery cable in place are also doubled up to hold the tank vent in place, so don't just tear the clips off and throw them away, because you'll need something to hold the tank vent on. What I hadn't realised was that this cable's aluminium, not copper. It does weigh a kilo, as you can see, or at least the amount I've got out is about a kilo. I guess there's probably about another 300 grams still in there. You know, that bit that runs around the fuel tank. So there's a bit to be saved there, and again, simplifies things, but not a massive saving. And I've already shown you the battery wiring, but if I just spin round here a bit and you can see the wiring, just get that there, yeah. So you can see where I've reused these clips to hold the wiring in place as it travels down the side of the car. Yeah, it produces a really neat finish. I'm quite pleased with it. What else is there to tell you? I retained the cigarette lighter power because for two reasons. One is because I've got a tyre inflator that runs off of the 12-volt socket, so I will use it for that. And also I'm going to use this rear one with the USB insert to power a rear-facing camera. I haven't bought the camera yet. I think I know the one I'm going to get, but I'll cover that in another video. The aux socket is not connected, so the wiring's been cut for that. This is where the parking distance control module was installed, and you can see that these are the sensor, the ultrasonic sensor wires. I haven't pulled them through yet because I'm going to, as I'm sure I've said to you many times before, I'm going to have to replace the bumpers, and I'll sort it out at that time. So I've left those in place. Everything else, you know, I've tried to retain the majority of the other wiring, in some ways because I'm not quite sure what I can safely remove, to be fair. I'm sure I could remove a lot of stuff from the tailgate here, but I decided that I'm going to just stick with what I've got here, and you know, I think I've simplified the wiring quite a lot, and I'm not going to save much in terms of weight, so I'm pretty happy with this. I have mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. When you're removing the twisted pair wiring that comes, it will come through here and it will go up and into the airbags, the head height airbags. Be very careful that you don't cut this twisted pair here, because that's the one for the ABS sensor. So if you cut that, you'll mess up the ABS. Talking to Rob at 4040, he told me that he removes this conduit from here and then he puts tape over it, because he said otherwise you'll get loads of, you know, water and dirt going inside the chassis. So he takes them off. I haven't taken it off yet. I might do in the future, but what I have managed to do is I have stripped all the wiring out from there. I'm sure you've noticed this in the regs, but I just want to reiterate, You're not permitted to remove any of the wiring loom in the engine bay, so don't be tempted to try and prune that back. There are very few things in here that are redundant. Probably on my car, the main thing is things associated with the air conditioning. Earlier in the video, I mentioned a rubber pipe for the rear washers. It eventually comes through up here, and I think you can see that I've sealed it off with a with a M6 hex socketed bolt, and it's stainless steel, so it won't corrode. It does the job. I mean, I'm sure you could come up with something better, but what I found was when I cut it, I started to get water dribbling out of it almost continuously, and I thought I can't be doing with that, so I decided just to seal it off. Now, of course, just because I wanted to show you this problem, it's not happening now. It's always the way. But what we're looking at here are the fault codes for the DME, for the ECU. What I found was that every so often it would show a RAM fault. It scared me, quite honestly, because I was thinking, oh my God, the ECM's gone duff. But actually, it seems to be associated with using the power cutout. What I found was if I don't throw the isolator button, if I just leave it powered on and I switch the car on and off, I can do it as many times as I like and I don't get a problem. But if I switch the car off and then switch it back on and then power up the car or switch the ignition on, it gave the error. You can clear the error and it doesn't seem to cause a problem with the running of the car, but it's worth mentioning that. So let's give it a go. So I would actually, with that powered up like that, let's try it again. Oh yeah, there you go. There's the fault. Let's see if we can get that focus. Yep. So we got that fault. Now if I clear that fault, I'm sorry this isn't focusing well, and read, oops, and read again, it's cleared. Now if I turn the car off, let's just do it. We'll keep the power on, so I won't throw the isolator. And let's switch it back on again and read the fault codes again. You can see it's not showing a fault code. But if I go through the process of then throwing the isolator, then switch the isolator on again, and power the car back up. I'm going to have to connect the car again. Okay, we're back in the DME. Now read the fault codes, and there you go, the problem's back again. As I sat here, I realised there was one final thing I hadn't spoken about. This, I think it's an accelerometer. When I first started to strip the car out, I wasn't sure what it was or whether I needed it or not. You definitely need it. You will completely mess up the DSC, whatever that stands for, stability control. Yeah, driver stability control. You can see that I've completely removed all the wiring associated with the seats. So aside from the occupancy sensor and the seatbelt buckle sensor, there's also other wiring in there, power wiring, because it's to move the, you press the controls on the side to move the seat backwards and forwards. It's all motorized, so you've got power wiring for that. If you've got heated seats, I don't think this one did. No, this car didn't have heated seats, but if you've got those, then you're going to have the wiring associated with that. All I did was I stripped it all the way back to the bulkhead over there, and then I sealed it off, and I think you can just about see where I've sealed the various wires that are hanging down. You could take it all the way back to the various control units or the fuse box, but to do that, you really need to have the dashboard out, and I didn't want to take the dashboard out, so I've taken them back that far. If I ever do take the dashboard out, then I'll probably take the opportunity to just strip that last remaining length of wire out. I should mention that you'll notice that there's no glove compartment. Now, although I've removed it, it's got to go back in the car. It's actually a regs requirement for our class. The only reason I've left it out is because actually, believe it or not, I've got a recall on the car for the wiring on this blower unit, because actually I can see the problem when I get underneath it. The wiring on the bottom of the unit is quite cooked and it's gone brittle. So I'm going to try and book in a recall, which should be quite interesting when I take this down there to show them. But I thought I may as well leave it off because that makes it easier for them to access that area and fix the problem.